So, I'm going to make another very obvious statement about something else that matters. Your church matters. I mean, obviously, someone agrees with me about that statement, or you wouldn't actually have a church. Someone started your church, someone gave money, someone volunteered to make sure that your church exists. So they obviously believe that your church matters. In some churches, there are even names etched into the stained glass on the plaques to suggest that there's a legacy of people who believed their church mattered. But here's a question for you to consider. Why does it matter for your church to exist? Think about it. I mean, you don't have to go to church to believe in God. You don't even have to go to church to feel close to God. Depending on how you're wired, you might feel close to God when you take a walk, like on a golf course. I know some guys that I'm sure talk to God a lot more when they're out playing golf. Or you might feel close to God when you're walking down a city street, surrounded by the creativity and energy of the people God created. Or maybe you feel close to God next to an ocean or lake, where you can feel the sun and the water and experience what God has created for you to enjoy. No matter where you live, you can actually skip church, eat dinner with your family, and feel gratitude for the relationships that God has given you. The point is, you don't have to go to church to believe in God or to worship God. And you don't have to go to church to be a Christian. There are a lot of people who decided to follow Jesus who don't go to church. There are Christians in your community who drive by churches every day who don't go to church. It doesn't mean they're not Christians just because they don't go to church. Going to church doesn't make you a Christian, and not going to church doesn't mean you're not a Christian. So, then why does church matter? Well, here's an idea. You don't have to go to church to be a Christian, but if you are a Christian, you should believe what Jesus said about the church. This is what Jesus said to Peter one day. On this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So, we could make a strong theological argument that one of the reasons the church matters is because the church is the best hope we have to win against the evil in this world. Actually, according to this passage, Jesus claims he is building the church to remind us that evil will never win. But I want to get back to the original question. Not simply why does the church matter? By that we mean the universal and invisible body of Christ. But why does your church matter? The church that sits on the street in your community that you attend, why does it matter? What does it matter to you personally? I mean, you're here today listening to this probably on behalf of your church, so for some reason it matters to you. I could make a few guesses about why your church matters to you. Maybe you thought you'd have a better chance to be invited to lunch. Or maybe you didn't want your mom or grandmom asking you why you weren't in church. Or maybe church gives you something to do on the weekends. Or you're hoping to meet your future husband or wife. Okay, maybe it's more than that. But what is your reason? Why does your church matter? Think about it. If someone cornered you at the grocery store or at a ball game or at a PTA meeting and said, "So, why do you go to church?" what would your answer be? Have you seriously considered that question enough to craft an answer? Even if you don't care enough to have an answer ready for some imaginary friend who may never ask you the question, what would you say to your kids if they asked you? Because there's a pretty good chance they will. If your son or daughter asks you one day, "So Dad, Mom, tell me, why is it we go to church?" what would you say? Because the Bible says we should, right? Or doesn't it say somewhere in the Bible, "Don't forsake the assembling of yourselves"? Or maybe because Jesus loved the church, don't we believe he laid down his life for the church? But if your kids are like mine, they may push that answer a little harder. They may ask you, "Yeah, but why do you think church matters? And why do we go?" Okay, I'm sure there are a lot of good answers to that question, but I want to give you at least one. It's not a complete answer, and it's not the only answer, but until you come up with your own answer, you can borrow this one. Your church matters because it's an actual place. It's a physical location where we can actually go to grow spiritually and relationally with other people and with God. The bottom line is your church matters because it's an actual place that helps you win at what really matters in life. Most importantly, your church helps you win in your relationship with God. Here's what you probably already know. If you are pursuing the right relationship with God, then it's easier to win in life and to win in your relationships with others. But notice how I started the sentence. My church is a place. Practically speaking, Your church is a physical location where people actually gather and do something. For nearly 2,000 years, the church has met in homes, catacombs, restaurants, buildings, cathedrals, tents, theaters, town halls, coffee houses, storefronts, schools, and hotels. Regardless of your denomination or worship style, the local church has always been a place where people can actually sit down to learn, worship, and share together. I can hear a skeptical voice in my head saying, but the church isn't a place, the church is people. And theologically, you may be exactly right. But practically speaking, your local church is also a place, and that's a good thing. I mean, I know I sound like I'm contradicting myself, but that's okay. I'm kind of comfortable disagreeing with myself sometimes. But it's important to think about the church as a place simply because people need a place. Before anyone can wrestle with abstract concepts like faith, hope, and the meaning of life, they need an actual place where they can connect with other people. Imagine what would happen if you started acting like your church may be the best chance someone has to find a place to belong. Never underestimate the power the right place has to affect relationships. Think of some of the best friendships you have observed. There was probably a significant gathering place that became the iconic symbol of the relationship. Seinfeld had a diner, Friends had a coffee house, Cheers had a bar. Okay, those may not be the best examples of relationships, but they all speak to the power of having a place where everybody knows your name. By the way, that's why we also need to be intentional about influencing the hearts of this generation. We have to get serious about creating a visible, tangible place where kids and teenagers know they belong. So, we've got to remember something important. As a church, we can't make relationships happen. We can only create environments that make it easier for relationships to happen. If I were oversimplifying our role as a church, I would simply say, your job is to create environments where kids, teenagers, and adults can effectively connect with leaders and each other. So, if you want your church to matter, you have to care about the kind of place you're creating for children, teenagers, and adults. How you arrange, how you decorate, how you organize the rooms in your church matters because it can determine how people connect or disengage with your church. Think about it this way. Your church can't make people follow Jesus. Your church can't insist that people come every Sunday. Your church can't force people to build relationships. But your church can create environments where people actually want to be and where they know they belong. So, if you want people to feel like they belong when they come to your church, consider this. People feel like they belong when they know they are welcome. Think about what you do when you invite guests to your home. You clean up, you organize the clutter, you sweep the floor, you light a candle. If they are staying overnight, you change the sheets, you lay out clean towels, you get food and drinks. It's simply your way of letting someone know you're thinking about them before they got there. And here's another thing to consider. People feel like they belong when they know it's for them. Have you ever been to a pediatrician's office and noticed how some keep a kid's table with preschool toys in the waiting room? The funny thing is, no one has to tell a child the table is for them. As soon as they see it, they walk over, pull up a chair, and sit down. They just instinctively know it's where they belong. There's a principle that we need to think about. It's important to look at our space through the filter of who we want to invite. The goal is for everyone who shows up at your church to realize that there is something for them. That's why you create unique spaces for different age groups. A teenager, for example, will never feel like they belong in a room designed for preschoolers. It takes effort to create a place specifically for kids and teenagers, but when you do, your church becomes a place that sends a very clear message that kids and teenagers are a priority. And here's one more thought. People feel like they belong when they know they are known. It's important to do everything you can possibly do to make sure everyone who shows up at your church gets connected to someone who ultimately gets to know them. And when it comes to kids and teenagers, this principle is even more important. The most important thing you can give any child or teenager is someone besides their parent who knows them and who cares about them. Kids need someone who knows how many fish are in their aquarium, what they're doing next Saturday, what happened at the game this weekend, where they're going on vacation, why they missed church last week, and when they're going to have their birthday party. The truth is, there's nothing in culture that can compare to what consistent leaders in a caring community of faith can provide for a child or teenager. That's why you need to do everything you can do to improve your environments. Every week, someone has to build something, book something, rent something, open something, organize something, suite something, light something, fix something, so that a church can be a place where people belong. So if you think your church matters, then be ready to give an answer. If someone asks you why your church matters, simply say, because it helps me grow or win in my relationship with God, and that matters. It helps me win at life and my marriage and my parenting and my relationships, and that matters. And second, do whatever you can to improve your church. Make people welcome. Look for ways to make different groups of people, especially children and teenagers, know they belong. Over the next few months, look for an opportunity to give something, do something, fix something, build something, lead something. Why? Because your church is an actual place, and you believe what happens at your church matters.